Hey, it's another great podcast. We have the returning champion Tyson with us today. How you doing, Tyson?
I am hanging in there. I'm starting to feel like a bit of a human being again because on the at 3 a.m. after the Vermont Green Football Club won the USL2 National Championship, a kidney stone dropped. So I've been in excruciating pain since 3 a.m. on Sunday. So rock and roll. I'm here. I'm ready to go. I'm on pain medication. Let's do this.
Let's do this. I also had a slight medical emergency at 3 a.m. as well. We're not going to talk about it on here because, yeah, it's a little bit different. But and nobody wants to hear that stuff anyway. But let's talk to Sammy Boy up there in my upper right hand corner. How you doing today, Sammy?
Doing good, doing good. I mean, I miss already being up in Vermont. Just the come down from such an amazing atmosphere is mighty, and I now am getting ready to return to the lovely Gillette Stadium. But excited to be back on and talk about this momentous occasion.
Yeah, the sights and sounds of your new goalkeeper. I'm sure they're gonna keep you busy, right? The
That
new
the,
old goalkeeper, right?
yes, the new old, and hopefully he has fun because we need some fun.
That's right. That's right. So we do have a special guest today. I'm gonna let Sam introduce him today because Sam was the guy. When we were down in Austin with the Blazing Musket covering the All Star game, Sam and I went to an awesome little kickoff party, and Sam said, "Hey, let's see if we can get this guy on the podcast." So I'm gonna let Sam go ahead and introduce him.
Yes, I am the David Gass fanboy. I will always love this man because I remember when SB Nation decided to completely cut their MLS coverage. This man on Extra Time wore our shirt supporting independent soccer media. David Gass, founder and host of SoccerWise, part of the Soccer Media Network. David, welcome to the show, and an honor to be able to chat with you again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. We are now doing this weekly. We saw each other in Austin, then we saw each other in Burlington. Now we're doing this one remote. So I'm excited to be welcomed back for the Tyson uh, kidney stone passing episode, which I assume will be the second most celebrated episode of the month.
I'm
Fingers
sure it
crossed.
will. I'm sure it will. I mean, we always have something going on this podcast that either allows us or does not allow us to be part of an episode. So it's kind of always nice to get the full crew here. And again, we do want to mention that Will is not with us because he is away being super dad, and he'll be back with us next season. So we look forward to that. But so, David, generally when we have a guest on here, what we do is we kind of get your soccer origin story, um, and and we can have you tell us a little bit about your projects because you're not the player or you're not the coach. So if you want, you can just kind of talk to us about your origin story. Where did you learn and fall in love with the game of soccer, and tell us a little bit about Soccer Wise and Kickback Committee.
Yeah, I grew up on Long Island, just outside of New York City. Um, I thought soccer was stupid for a long time. A long time is probably an exaggeration, but when you're a kid, it feels like a long time. And then around 12, 13 years old, a friend of mine convinced me and my parents that I should try soccer. So I showed up one day randomly at the field to play and pretty quickly fell in love with it. And I think the playing side, then I started sort of connected the sport to the other sports that I watched, right? I'm a Mets, Jets, Knicks fan, so love losing. I think that's like really core to my identity. And, went to my coach and was like, hey, I don't know what to do because I don't watch the game like I do with these other sports. So he recommended watching Arsenal at the time and Patrick Vieira and some of their center backs. This was around 2003. And so I sort of fell in love with watching that. And then I think just the connection and fascination to other places. Like I was already a history nerd because I love different histories, but cultures and all of that. And so for me, hand in hand, like I fell in love with the sport as a viewer and a fan and a community, and fell in love with it as a game that I could play. And so I started playing on my local travel teams and moved up the levels, which was very exciting. I was always one spot behind Sam Glickman, who is one of the founders of Vermont Green, and that's how we got to know each other. He was my left back, and I was the center back for a little while, playing school ball, playing club ball as well. And then it sort of took over and like became everything for me. So I've traveled all around the world. I guess I've probably seen the game on every continent except Africa. I tried to go to a game in Egypt. When they asked for my blood type on the app, I thought that was a little bit weird. And then when I watched the game that day, it was an Al Ahly game, I realized they weren't allowing fans in the stadium. So still have to break that barrier, but traveled all over. I've, connected with people through the sport. I'm passionate about the game in a lot of different ways. And all of that has become my career. So I went to Northeastern in Boston, as many people will know. Adam Pfeiffer was the assistant coach when I was a student there, and I broadcast all the games alongside a former player but current student in Santiago Bedoya, which is part of how my interview this week came together with Adam Pfeiffer and Alejandro Bedoya. And so covered that. Northeastern beat BC in 2015, the NCAA tournament. I called it the Bean Pot on the pitch. It was arguably the most important game in New England soccer history until this week. I think many people have said that before, so I'm glad I could just be one of the many who are talking about Andre Chiliota's game-winning goal and Don Anding and Dante Marini. They're legendary names for almost no one who will know who these people are. And I've broadcast soccer pretty much since I was in school. MLS, NWSL, USL, youth ranks, youth championships, international games, Canada, Mexico, Panama, CONCACAF Champions League, all that type of stuff, and then hosting shows as well. And last year that became an independent set of shows. So I left MLS in my part-time role, hosting Extra Time, and created SoccerWise alongside Tom Bogert and Jordan Angeli, covering MLS, NWSL, anything else under the sun. And then we sort of formed into a larger group over the last few weeks called Kickback Media, which does everything that a media company does, but most importantly is our own shows covering soccer, bringing Susanna Fuller on board, who I've worked with a lot in the past, and we just did a happy hour hangout with Jay Demerit, which was every bit as fascinating as it sounds like it might be, and just rolling and rocking, putting out shows as often as I can.
I love that. I mean, it's always great to hear people's kind of origin stories, and because I think the thing about soccer in America is that everybody's got a different story, because we didn't always necessarily come up with parents who watched a game or rooted for a specific team or had any
or had a local team
history, right? So Vermont in particular, but in the U.S. soccer landscape, it's very, very kind of tribal, and it's very, very community based, and you do have to build something from the ground up. So with that said, let's talk about the game a little bit, because there are a lot of different layers to this, and I think the first thing that I noticed, because I got to Virtue Field at 9:30 in the morning to set up the Green Mountain Boys tailgate, right? So I had my tents up and everything, and people were already starting to line up. There was a guy bringing a futon in. There were two people at the gate waiting to run and get the pitch side seats. And then by the time game time started, there was a line down the driveway, the parkway to get up into the parking lot, and around onto Spear Street, all the way down Spear Street. So, Sam, as a media guy, you get to kind of go in early. You get to see what the setup is. When you saw that scene, what was your first reaction? Because we know that there was a sellout, instantaneously, but did you expect the amount of people to show up that showed up?
Oh, I was absolutely, I guess, stunned, but you kind of don't necessarily get surprised anymore with just how much Vermont and Burlington has supported the squad. But, obviously myself and Dolan driving up from Vermont, we got there, driving up from Mass, we got there a little bit later. And just arriving, seeing just how big the line was. As we got there, it was soon after you saw the Club 11 bus arrive. It was just absolute, just you could feel the electricity in the air, and definitely waiting on the pitch for everything to start. Once the players got out, you could kind of feel that tension continue to grow. But it's something I've never probably really experienced and might never experience again. I believe David got a great video showing just how long the line was, and
Yeah.
being able to see.
It's probably the best social thing I've actually ever done.
It was a great video, so great mind there. But like just seeing all the people, waiting for a USL 2 game is absolutely insane. And again, credit to Vermont Green for being able to create that atmosphere. But it was at that moment where you realize that it was going to be a special night, and that it really showcased what is beautiful about a community coming together to support a team. So it's definitely something I hadn't experienced before, and might not ever experience again.
Yeah.
No, Dave. I mean, you've come to games previously, right?
This was my second game.
Right. So the first time, I'm sure there wasn't as much fervor from the fans and people getting there early to tailgate and that kind of stuff. But this time you're coming not to watch the game, but to broadcast the game, right? So, what was the experience like comparatively, coming as maybe a prospective fan or just someone checking out the scene, to someone who's going to be actually working on the game and broadcasting in the absence of Brian McLaughlin?
Yeah, a funny thing happens if you ever work games like this in any capacity, which is you get to the stadium really early, and as Sam mentioned, as you've mentioned, like there was already a crowd developing, exciting. The hill was packed with chairs, but not with people. So you like had this anticipation of what it would be. But a funny thing happens, which is the game kind of happens to you. Like you're working, and in your head you have a clock of like when kickoff's going to be. But as you're working, all of a sudden there's a capacity crowd. And I've had this happen to me in Atlanta with 65,000 people, and in Seattle, whatever, which is like you're working for multiple hours, and all of a sudden you look up and you're like, oh, the building's filled. And like, this is a thing that's happening. And so I was very conscious this weekend of trying to enjoy the moment. It was a little bit more emotional for me, having a friend so heavily connected and multiple friends so heavily connected. And I think originally I wasn't sure I was going to make it for the game, like at all. Like I wasn't going to be able to get up to Vermont, even though I told my friend, like, if you make the national championship, I'll be there. Turns out it's really expensive to get to Burlington, Vermont in the summer, especially I now live in Miami. So driving's not an option. So I think once I realized I was coming, it was like, I want to make sure that I soak these moments in and not look up and all of a sudden it's the 85th minute and the game's over. So I kind of took a lot of videos and pictures as a way to just like have moments for myself to be like, oh, look around and recognize what's happening. That's why I went out and did that line. That was after the gates had already opened, by the way. That video I took wrapped around, there was already a couple hundred people in the building when or in the stadium when I took that. So you always have those experiences where you're like, all of a sudden it hits you that the whole thing's happening. And so I was trying to be conscious of it and trying to sort of like soak it in and live in it. But there was a moment with an hour, 45 minutes to go for the game, right? The fans come out and you sort of look around. I was down on the field at the time asking a question to the fourth official, and you look around and you just like could feel the heartbeat of the building. You could feel everyone cheering from all the sides. I was walking behind some people who had ladders that were setting up, watching people watch from the shipping containers and the construction site. So yeah, it was a unique experience. It's one I'll never forget. I would argue it's the coolest thing I've ever done. Just like the way the whole feel is of it. It was the most summer experience you could possibly have, and it just had everything in it. And then the joy that everyone was feeling from it, and just a chance to witness that and sort of dip into that for a couple moments for myself was really, really special and something I'll never forget. And so it had all the models of this is how I work. I build my notes. I talk to the coaches. I go to training. I set up. I get ready for the game. But every piece of it had a different element to it that I've never experienced before.
Now, unfortunately, our friend Tyson over here didn't actually get to go to the game. Tyson, everybody who knows the Green Mountain Boys, Tyson, they know that Tyson is there. You know, Tyson is the guy who shows up. He was unable to be there because it is very hard to plan for being in the championship match, right? So you have to plan your life kind of around that, and sometimes you just don't get to make it. But Tyson, like when we're kind of going into the game as a group of supporters, you know we have I myself have never experienced anything like that, and you've seen the pictures, you've seen the videos of what it looked like outside. How do you feel things have changed, in terms of where we started to now?
I mean, I think that honestly, the thing that sticks out the most to me is actually how little has changed between when this club started up. You know, I was at the first game back in 2022. I know that you were too, Mike. We had the Montreal Impact Ultras there who were shirtless with their megaphones and drums. And, it's the same kind of just like joyous communal feeling that was there then, was there on display at the championship. You know, in looking at, all the video, all of the pictures, all of the social media posts that have been done about this game, the thing that just honestly like brings me so much joy is that you know um, the owners all decided that, you know what, we're gonna go and take down all of the like advertising wraparounds that are all around all the fences. Let's just have open up all the hills. Let people bring their couches, bring their chairs, bring their grills, like bring a cooler. We don't care. We just want people there to be able to watch this game. If this was like, can you imagine if someone even had the vaguest ability to put a ladder up next to an MLS field and watch a final from the side? Like they would have been like executed by stadium security. And just the stark
Sam nearly got executed once.
yes. Just like the whole just community atmosphere that just came down on the Bernie Bow was just amazing. And I will say that even though I wasn't able to go to the game, a really good friend of mine, Adam, who I used to work with back when I used to work at WCAX. He's the morning show director there. Shout out to him. He has been like a big fan of the Green, and he brought his father-in-law, who has just gotten super into the team over this past year. He's like in his mid 70s. He said that the being able to go to this final and be able to watch this game has been probably the biggest sporting event he has been to in his entire life. He is hooked. He is going to try and do whatever he can, come hell or high water, to try and get season tickets next year. Good luck to him, but it's I can't say enough about it.
Can I throw in? I mentioned this was like a different work experience for me. So I went to training the day before and chatted with the coaches and founders of both clubs, which was awesome. And by the way, big shout out to Sam Zizette and James Riley and Lamar Nagel and everyone a part of Ballard. Like, I think what was hard doing the broadcast was kind of remembering which team was which, because they are both so similar in what they are building and the people they're building it for and the way they've done it. And so you had like these cool stories and memories, like a memory of them that I wanted to say. And then I'm like, wait, let me check my notes to make sure I'm saying the right team. Because which one did the farmers market celebration? Which one does the brewery parties? Like, yeah, they're pretty similar in a lot of ways. But while I was doing that, the founders and some of the members of the team were clearing off all of those signs. And underneath the scoreboard was like a ton of shrubbery and weeds and all this stuff. And when I graduated high school, I worked as a landscaper. So I went over and cleaned up all of that. And then the next day to show up and see people being able to sit there, which was the whole point. And being a landscaper was my favorite job I've ever had. So it was a great fusion moment for me, full circle, to be able to do that and help out a little bit.
And not to discount anything pregame, but like let's get right into this game. Lineups. I think they pretty much went as we expected. Nathan Simeon. We had a back line of Nathan Simeon, Victor Akum, Brendan Marshall, and USL 2 Defender of the Year, Musa Ndiaye. The midfield. We kind of knew what was going to happen in the midfield. We knew that it was going to be Julian, right? This was going to be kind of his send off. He's not going to be that super sub anymore. We're not saving him for anything. We're going to just turn him loose, let him be the creative presence he is. Let Zenge, sit in that number 8, be a guy who can play box to box, a guy who can free roam, be creative if he needs to, get shots off if he needs to, and basically like the Bahoys like to say, set the tone, right? So I mean, were there any really surprises for any of you guys in the starting lineups at all? I mean, looking at like our center forwards, our center forward and our wingers. I think everybody pretty much expected what we saw out there. Did anybody have any surprises?
I don't know if it was a surprise. Obviously, injuries might be injuries. And obviously, a guy like Rui Aoki is getting ready for the University of Vermont season. Maybe you would have liked to see him for Nathan Simeon, but not to get ahead here. But kudos to Nathan Simeon, put in an absolute shift. And didn't necessarily know if he would be able to. So full credit there. But yeah, like you said, not a lot of surprises there.
Yeah, and I mean, we had talked about on the pod the week of the championship that, Coach Taylor has such a deep bench to work with this team that there was basically, an almost infinite number of lineups he could have gone with. And being able to have someone like Diego Rived, who was able to go and make that start when it had been, Zelafru had been, kind of taking a lot of those early minutes to really go and run down the opposition and kind of soften them up for when, Labordalu or Yarda would be getting onto the pitch to kind of, really kind of flex their muscles. It's pretty much how we thought that they might line up, how they might play. I wasn't that surprised, but Labordalu being able to go, as long as he could was definitely a great sight to see.
I guess everyone calls him Chris Taylor so often that I actually had never heard anyone say Coach Taylor. Is there a lot of Friday Night Lights stuff going on?
Ooh.
I literally had never thought of that till this moment, which I'm pretty pissed about.
Bravo to you, sir.
I had 2 hours to make Friday Night Lights, Tammy Taylor, Clear Eye, Full Heart jokes, and I wasn't able to do them. But I think I agree with what you guys said. I mean, clearly from watching the tape and talking to the coaches and everything, I think there was a little bit of a fear with Ballard, their ability to play in the channels between the lines with especially their 2 central midfielders. So I think there was like a clear idea, which was once Labordalu is starting, I think Rived's on the field because he gives more defensively and more ground coverage, where Zelafro getting the starts is probably a bit more in possession, but Labordalu is giving you that, and you need to be able to cover that ground. And then the only other one would be Gabe Fernandez, which I know Chris Taylor has used as this like second half change of pace. You could say on one side Richie Amon's so good the winger for Ballard, that
Mr. Ballard.
yeah, you know Simeon's not going to get forward, so maybe you want to start with the attack option on the left. And we saw, right? Akum had to be aggressive, played front foot in that whole first half because you weren't going to get it from the right side because you couldn't. But I think it would have been a real change of pace from everything you had seen and would have been a little bit of a surprise.
I think what Taylor's really, really good at, and I think we've talked about it, is setting up tactically to make the other team feel uncomfortable for all 90 minutes of the game. And I think there was maybe one game where he didn't really get it right, and that was against Connecticut earlier in the season. And that, you know, in that draw, he maybe didn't get it right, but for the most part, he got it right all season long. And he talked to us at the beginning of the season about how he, you know, it's kind of like a step on the throat type of a situation where, you know, you want to find yourself in a position where you're dominating the game and then you want to push it even further. And I feel like he's been doing that throughout the playoffs, where they get into a position where they start to dominate and they wear that other team down, and then they throw guys like Gabe Fernandez at you. They throw guys like Julian Labordelou at you, who's like, you know, Julian Labordelou has proved to not be able to have the ball taken from him, right, for the most part. What was unexpected for me, from especially in the first half, was Nathan Simeon. And I have given Nathan a lot of shit over the past few weeks for not being ready but still being played, which speaks a lot to Coach Taylor's faith in him, really. And I think that, you know, he was really not able to handle the forwards from Lionsbridge, from Motown. He had a really, really hard time with them. And then we get into this championship game, and I saw him on that team sheet, and I was like, oh man, you know, he's got to go up against two of the best wingers in the country, plus have to deal with one of the better midfielders in the country too, in Otero, right? So like, he came in and, like Sam said, he put in a shift. He was really one of the big surprises for me in this game, especially in the first half. Sammy, talk about what you saw in the first half and about how Vermont tried to deal with the pressure that Ballard puts on, because I mean, we talked about it, they're a very similar team to the way we play, right? They're not just similar in their structure of their club, but in the actual team. So talk to us about what you felt in the first half and how Vermont was able to deal with some of the pressure that they put on us.
Yeah, it was definitely, you know, back and forth in the sense that, you know, I feel like both teams were able to get their chances. You know, obviously, if things go another way, you look at the chances. Tatavan puts in a goal, but it was ruled offside. Musa Ndai also too had a header that.
Have we watched that back enough, by the way? It was off, right? Because the keeper is past the last.
The only thing I didn't know is if the defender touched the ball and if that kind of negated it, but
I don't know if it's purposeful enough of a touch to reset the play is the problem.
Yeah,
and like you could argue, Tatavine affects him touching it.
True.
Yeah, it was close.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, this is also USL League 2, so you know, I think like if someone put it, you know, it's
someone call Zurich. Let's get VAR on the line.
Well, it's development for the players and development for you know, the officials too. But you know, you have those two chances through Ndai and Tativan, and again, if the game goes otherwise, maybe you look back. But you know, it was really close. I felt like Vermont's press, you know, was able to really put Ballard under some pressure. But Ballard too, to itself, you know, whether it be working on the wings or just being able to create chances of its own, you know, really did a good job. You know, there were shouts for a penalty, and honestly, I think maybe in a different league, that penalty's probably given. I believe Victor Akum, you know, committed what would have been a foul. So, you know, it's definitely a game that was there for the taking. And I feel that, you know, Chris Taylor's press worked well. I feel like maybe you were missing someone up front who was maybe more of a traditional number 9, holding someone up. Obviously Jacob Labovich is someone who's been putting in, shifts as we've been mentioning, but again, he's got tired legs as well. So overall, after the first half, thought that, the game was really waiting to open itself up, and that obviously came in the second half where things started to get really interesting.
And I was going to say, David, I don't know how much of the USL2 um, you kind of watched leading up to this game, maybe not just the Northeast Division, but kind of across the country, you know, and if you hadn't watched much of the USL2, what was your kind of in-person experience seeing these two teams out on the field?
The, I think it was very clear these are the two best teams. I watched all the Vermont playoff games, just enjoying it from afar. And then in getting ready for the game, I went back and watched a bunch of the Ballard games. And the results were close. The games were tight. But a lot of that was game states and styles. Like I would say Lions Bridge is physical and robust and dangerous on set pieces. But one of my favorite things that will ever happen, it doesn't happen very often, is when there's a no weak link soccer game. And a game's not won because you can take advantage of this problem in a team, but a game's won because of a moment of excellence or a moment of greatness. And that was the case in this game. And that isn't really the case for these two teams for the run they went on. Like they played good teams. Flint City was good. Dothan was good. Those games went, deep and they could have lost. Both these teams could have lost those games. But this was on another level. And I think you saw that in the first 10 minutes as the two teams put each other under pressure in a way that most away teams hadn't really done over the course of the playoff run. And I think it was like very clear that these were the two best teams. And I felt that way afterwards, talking to a lot of people who watched from afar, people who watched from close. But yeah, being there, the speed of play, the intensity in a lot of the moments, the skill level overall, I think really, really high. Players' ability to get out of tight spaces and work through pressure. And I think for the most part, both teams were fairly cohesive. So yeah, this was like the perfect display for the league to say like, this is what we are. And this is what if you're into this, come back next year. Now, if I live in Iowa or if I live in Indiana and I go and watch my local team, will I have that same experience? Probably not, but that's what you want from a championship game. And I think that's definitely what we got.
I think all of those thoughts are really super valid. And we're getting a lot of commenters, on the chat too, coming from YouTube apparently, and everybody says set the tone. And I just do want to mention that my choice of drink tonight is Prohibition Pig. One of our supporters, Terry, is the head brewer at Prohibition Pig. He brewed a beer that is now on top. It's in Crowlers. It's 32 ounces. It's a big beer, but it is called Set the Tone. So I do want to mention Terry because Terry loves to be mentioned. He loves to have his picture taken, and you're a wizard, Terry. So just want to get those words out there. But yeah, so again, the tone was set in the first half, right? This was going to be a Rocky 2 type of a battle. Not Rocky, not the first Rocky, the second Rocky where, both guys go down at the end and one guy gets up at the very last second, right? So there's been some talk about the penalty shout, right? So Abby drives the ball into the box, goes down, and there are a few different angles of that penalty. It seems like there might be a shout for maybe disallowing that as a penalty because one angle shows that there's not much contact at all. I did see an angle where there's some feet got tangled. I did see another angle where it seemed to be a shove in the back that was pretty clear. So, I mean, are we going to entertain any of those ideas that maybe it wasn't a penalty or was a little too soft? I don't know. I think that, and I don't think there's a makeup call. I think in that moment, there was a lot of action down on that end of the field. Vermont was pushing very, very hard. They were doing generally what they do, which is beat teams down and it seemed to me the Ballard defenders were starting to get a little bit weary in the legs. So I mean, does anybody feel that there should not have been a penalty called in that situation?
I think it's always interesting when you're kind of in the box. Some things can maybe get accentuated, and it's just essentially, as a defender, you just got to try and be as careful as you can. But again, even I think if you're of the mind, and I think it was shared in among fans, the Ballard recap of the game may have mentioned that it was maybe shouldn't have been called a penalty, but let's say that is the case. Luckily, it wasn't the goal that would end up clinching the game. So you at least don't have maybe that asterisk if you are Ballard. But definitely in the moment, thought it was a penalty. Watching from the sidelines, so it definitely looked at again. Maybe if you slow things down, look on replay, things can maybe not look as bad, or in the other case look much worse. But luckily it wasn't necessarily the defining moment of the game. That would come later. But again, I think at this level, it's a little bit tough to try and nitpick, officiating calls when obviously, these aren't MLS refs. This isn't pro or what have you. So it's a little bit tougher to kind of nitpick there.
We don't. Yeah, we generally don't go back and adjudicate that. What happened, but we are a podcast, so I mean, it's kind of partially what we do here, right?
I can tell you, I've done a lot of content about Vermont Green this week, and I got my reward and my hot sauce from the Lobbing Scorchers hosts, who are based in Seattle and Ballard FC fans earlier today. And in the comments, many Seattle fans, there was a question of how the referee was from Vermont for the game, which is a USL2 reality, which
Yes.
is you're not traveling refs in from all over. So I understand that that's out there. The first half penalty kick claim was a handball on, I think it was Akun. And
Right.
from the highlight we got, his hand was outside the box, so it was fine. On this one, first in real time, I thought 100% penalty, seeing it from behind. And then when you see the camera from behind the goal from the other angle, that's where it starts to become a little bit more risky or a little bit more questionable. Kai Briscoe laid out Zach Zenge 30 seconds into the game at right
Laid
back.
him out.
Went for a
That was
two-footed tackle in a way that I have not seen in any sort of professional realm game. So in saying that, I think he was riding that line. I think you put yourself in a bad spot if you do that for a larger amount of time. I think you put yourself in a bad spot if you do that in the box. And so is it 51-49? Maybe, but you can't put yourself in that situation.
Eventually, the referee's not going to give you that benefit of the doubt. Right? So yeah, I think
And
that.
I mean,
Go ahead, Tyson.
well, what I was going to say is that if you start slowing down and taking shots from multiple angles, you can convince yourself of anything. That's one of the huge problems with VAR, with any kind of, instant replay officiating that you're trying to do. Part of the, in my mind, part of the joy, part of the glory of the sport that is soccer is that, you know what? Sometimes plays on the field get called wrong because it is a hairline between what may be a penalty, what might not be a penalty, even though I think that I also thought it was a penalty on, watching the replays kind of from the game stadium cam from the broadcast view of it. But, you can talk yourself into almost anything if you really feel like it.
For sure. So, so not much longer. Not much more time goes by. We end up. Ballard ends up equalizing. Very, very nice goal. Very nice goal. So I mean, Dave, take me through what you saw on that goal, and Herseg has had a couple of situations where maybe he's in during this season where he's not necessarily in the right position to defend. Take us through that goal because in my estimation, Herseg may have been shielded, and didn't see that ball coming in. Um, I don't want to. We're not going to place blame on anybody, but like, talk to us about how how that goal developed.
Yeah, I think one is the substitutes. Like it's the moment after Ballard makes the substitutions, and I think especially with the way the game had played out of the like give and take 1v1 battles the two fullback winger sets were on. I think maybe there's like a momentary pause or lapse of concentration because you don't know what you're facing at that moment, and so it's the first touch for the substitutes for Ballard that drives that cross in, and I think it's less that Herseg doesn't read it. I think it's that Kosakov's leap is so high and unexpected. Like, don't know that I didn't expect the contact to come where it did. Like, you think it's a looping ball to the far post,
Right.
and Kosakov rises up and gets the header. And I think that's what creates the goal. And it's something that, in going back and watching Ballard, like it's something he's capable of. He had scored 5 goals in the playoff run, so you know it's coming somewhere. And it'd been a really quiet game for him, and he wasn't super connected to the game, and he wasn't really involved in the great strikers. Like, that's who they are, and that's what they do. So I think, to me, the flow of the game out of the substitution into the unexpected cross delivery and the way the contact comes, I think that's what causes the goal. That's the moment of brilliance. That's the greatness of that play. But to my earlier point of like, I don't think it's a weak link moment. I don't think it's a mistake really from anyone. It's just a great moment for Ballard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think overall, like, I really have to give it to those players of Ballard, and you switch those uniforms, and it's the teams are so similar in the way that they set up their structure, the way that they play ball, and yes, Koskov is one of those kind of those strikers that needs to be involved in the game, and he just was. It's kind of similar to like in the past, Yaniv Bazzini he was one of those players that needed to be involved in the game and constantly showed up, right? We had a little bit of that from Tyler Trimnell earlier in the season, that type of a striker, right, as well. But I think in the end, what won Vermont the game was timely substitutions. I mean, waiting as long as Chris Taylor did to put those substitutions in, and making the smart substitutions, that he made, really ended up winning the day. But Sam, we have a goal to talk about that might go down in Vermont history and might get a statue built.
Yeah, I do want to point out, speaking of statues, we kind of did gloss over the Julian Laborde goal, and not only the goal, but the
No.
celebration.
Celebrate. Okay, we can talk about the celebration.
Because I want to point out, so,
That needs to be
being on the field,
poster, a T-shirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
a statue possibly.
Statue.
But again, I believe the Green Mountain Boys, something about Vermonters love the plastic chair, whether it is Bernie Sanders or Julien Labordelou. But someone who's down there trying to get content, terrible, because I ran to the corner thinking, oh, he must be doing something, maybe hopping to go defend. Oh no, he brings out a chair. I'm starting to wondering if we're gonna get some, WCW action here, someone getting hit with it. But he brings out the aura on this man, as the kids will say, to Selly there was absolutely amazing. So great Selly there, and then to get to another iconic moment, you have Labordelou play that cross in, and you have Brandon Marshall, looked like he could have gotten a touch to it, but ended up being luckily, it falls to Maxi Kissel, and he puts it away. I mean, it's been talked about a bunch. If a lot of people probably are aware, Maxi Kissel scored the game-winning goal for the University of Vermont, and he's now doing it for Vermont Green FC. The kid seems to be a clutch machine. So it was an amazing moment. And, coming in stoppage time too, the game had gotten to the point where it almost seemed like maybe both teams were like gearing up for that. Okay, let's dig in we might be playing for, extra time like Vermont has become comfortable with, or maybe even longer. But just kind of out of nowhere, that ball is played, and all of a sudden, kind of like what David's been saying, that moment of greatness. Kissel was able to take advantage, and he talked about it. It was going to come down to who was able to take advantage of their chances that they were given, and that's exactly what Kissel did.
Again, I really think that like it does come down to the timely substitutions. It comes down to um, the shape that Vermont was in, the players, the fact that they train differently, than many USL 2 teams where they practice every day. They don't get days off. Um, they are in game shape when they come in. They are in game shape when they go out. Amoni Thomas talked about how much of a grind it was playing every 3 days, right? We talked to him early in the season on the podcast and about how it was such a grind to come in and play every 3 days and practice in between. Like, these kids are there to get in shape for their season, but they're also there to play competitive football or soccer. Um, and I think that like the way that Vermont is just able to wear teams down, they there were that goal was coming. It was coming at one point or another whether it was going to be in an extra time or not. It was coming in because those last 10 minutes, that last 10-minute section, Vermont Vermont was clearly had the upper hand. Clearly had the upper hand.
Yeah, I think you talk about the substitutes. Matt Montel on the broadcast sort of mentioned in the first half, like Arno Tatavine sort of holding his knee a little, maybe not being fully comfortable. But I think the Max Kissel substitution at halftime, whether it was forced or not, I think credit to Chris Taylor. I think that brought Zenge into the game a little bit more. And Tatavine wants to drop in and connect, which is great, but he never turned and ran. And so you started to see Ballard be able to shrink the field on their press and be able to close in because there was no threat over the top. Once Kissel comes on the field and he starts making vertical runs, it opened up the gap underneath for Zenge. And sometimes that meant Zenge made his own runs into other holes. Other times it was to drop in. But then that second wave of substitutions, as you mentioned, the timeliness of Gabe Fernandez. So Gabe Fernandez comes on. Now he dominates that left wing. But I thought the key to that was David Ajagbe coming on because he sort of comes inside and plays as a second forward, plays as a second 10, and it just threw Ballard's defensive shape off completely. And that, to me, was what it started to feel like that goal was coming, was Fernandez now running that touchline. Jagby comes inside. You've got 2 or 3 options at all times to play off of, 2 or 3 options to have to defend. And I thought that really brought Zenge back into the game. And I thought it was a quiet game for Zenge. I thought the last 15 minutes, though, he was phenomenal.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Totally agree.
And I honestly feel like during the regular season, we didn't actually kind of get to see the best of Njagbe because we had Njike overplaying in that same space. The fleet footwork, goal merchant, he of the many backflips in celebration after his goals. But I was, thoroughly impressed with what David Njagbe has been able to do, especially over this postseason. I mean, I think that there was at least one game where he actually either started as or came in as the striker for the team. He can play anywhere across that front three. He's a threat running inside. Like David said, he can just go and drag players out of positions because he is a threat to score goals. And, being able to have someone like that off the bench is just a fantastic arrow to have in your quiver.
So, okay, Vermont wins this game. We don't need to talk about this anymore. Vermont wins this game. Sights and sounds. I want to hear from everybody because each one of us have different distinct vantage points of what the celebration felt like, what it looked like, and how it made you feel. I'll start with David because he was in the crow's nest as it was.
It was epic, obviously. It was loud. It had energy. I've been around a lot of trophy lifts. There's like a run of show that you go through, which I was a part of the conversation the day before. So there's like a part of me that goes into that work mode of like, okay, we're at T minus 16 minutes was my understanding of like when the trophy gets lifted. What are we talking about? What are we doing? When are we tossing the studio? When are we getting it back? Um, and that part I think was awesome, and I think you could feel the like magnitude of it all. And then everyone runs on the field, and I've watched it from afar a lot of times, so to be there for it was really really cool. And after I was finally done broadcasting, I came down and hugged the people that I knew, and then I was like, I just want to walk around and experience this and watch it. And watching Chris Taylor and Max Kissel sign kids T-shirts that were like not even Vermont Green related T-shirts with Sharpies, and watching the players take photos under the USL2 banner with little kids and put their medals around other kids, necks, and trade the trophy around and celebrate, and just like the community feel of it all. It goes from feeling like this huge professional thing to feeling like a small community thing, and back again, like over and over again, which is just unique. You don't get that pretty much anywhere. And so to have it all sort of wrapped together in that of all of your, people that are around it, familiarity with the players and the coaches and the people that are part of the team, but also the like reverence and respect and excitement around what happened. It was like hand in hand, and it was one of the coolest things ever. I was chatting with Meg Linehan, who I'd never met before, and obviously I'm a big fan of her work, so that was like a pretty crazy moment. I just said like, this is so cool. And Meg's like, this is one of the most wholesome things in sports. Like, there's just nothing like it. And it lasted for a long time, which was cool. Like you kind of want to sit in that moment for a while, and I think there was an opportunity. Like, I saw you late into the night, but for sure on the field for a while, and I think everyone kind of had their little bit of it.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of, also too, very loosely using the word working, but, providing coverage, I mean, immediately as that whistle blew, I was, was trying to capture the scenes. I remember I talked to Tristan, who is one of the friends from Canada, had to ask him the question of, so
One
do
of
we,
the original photogs, yeah.
do we got any smoke? Do we got any flares? And he may have hinted that he did, so I was already ready for that moment. But just to see the players immediately rush over, celebrating with the fans, and then, eventually getting the trophy and being able to bring that over to the fans, it just shows just how close the relationship is there. I mean, it's something that you don't necessarily get with a lot of soccer teams. But it really seems like the club has kind of highlighted that, the players and the fans and the coaching staff all have this kind of close-knit relationship. Obviously similarly, again, to give the congratulations to the people, getting to run over to Mike and seeing, a bunch of, the boys in green, and it was just an amazing moment. Again, it's just something like you mentioned, David, you kind of sit in it. Eventually you start talking to people and getting the quotes and what have you. But just kind of, especially maybe for the owners, getting to see like they kind of built this, they kind of were able to construct this, and I'm pretty sure it probably surpasses everything they could have imagined. And I'm pretty sure I would probably describe them as the best owners in American soccer, just because of their commitment to this, and just how much, again, they care about the community and also the club. So it was an amazing moment, and it was amazing just to kind of get those reactions from the players, and just continue to just like, again, it's basically what David said. It was like the most wholesome moment you could ever imagine, and it was essentially something you could only write in a story. I mean, again, Mackie Kissel gets it for UVM, and then gets the winner for Vermont Green. You couldn't write it any better.
Did you see what happened to Owen Shirt? Like, what happened?
Oh, I do know what happened. I know this because I am friends with Luke Sturgio from Club 11. Shout out Club 11. It's now on the Club 11 bus. He donated it. So there's that. I don't know if they.
Did he drop the flare on his own shirt? Is that
Ooh,
what
I
happened?
don't know. That's a Mike question now.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I believe that the just the sparks from the flare went and just burned the shirt because the Quebecois brought down a bunch of flares during the U.S. Open game when we beat Lexington, because I have a punked out studded vest that I was wearing at that game that is also covered with scorch marks from the flares that our fine French friends to the north brought down for that game as well.
Yeah, and
They tried to burn the stadium down.
I also too had to get rid of a pair of shoes because I was told by a police officer that like the flare dropped and it was like just on the turf, and I was just the closest person. He's like, you have to stamp that out, and I'm like, okay. So I stamp it out, and my Adidas shoes were just all covered, with smut and what have you. So I'm like, oh, gotta get rid of these shoes. But shout out to our friends from up north.
Legitimate road flares.
Yeah, they're high
in
quality.
the kit that comes in your car when you buy your car. Canadians don't mess around when it comes to ultras in soccer. Listen, I had a different experience from the first game of our playoff run. And Tyler one of our original members of this podcast, we call him the creator because he is an amazing graphic artist, an amazing artist. Creates many of our tifos. Is the godfather of our supporters group. I'm gonna give him all the credit, but like one of Tyler's friends brought his I think it's his mom to the game, and she's an older lady, and she's a little tiny Asian lady who stands behind me when I stand and I shout into my megaphone, and she never had a problem with it the entire playoff run. That first match that we played, I said, if we score a goal here, I'm going to hug you. And we scored that goal against Motown, and then I hugged her, and then I hugged her again, and throughout that playoff run, every single time that something amazing happened, I hugged this little old lady who was standing behind me, and I want to apologize to her, but I also want to thank her for providing me that outlet. In the chaos of that goal in the final whistle, I sat down on the stands that I had been standing on, and I had been cheering from, and I had been chanting from, and on the megaphone from, and I cried. And my daughter, who stands on the rail with me, my daughter who has stood next to Tyson for 3 years now, on that rail, who is 16 years old. She has no interest in soccer outside of my love for Tottenham and our combined love for the Vermont Green. She turned to one of the other people that stands next to us and said, "I've never seen my dad cry before." So that for me was the experience that made it all worth it. These 3 years, and it seems like a long time. It does seem like a long time, but like all these 3 years prior, and then the year prior to that, our inaugural season, these 4 years combined, it brought it all to a head. And then I got to go down on the field. I got to go down on the field and hug my son, who stands in a different section. I got to go down on the field and hug people that I've never seen before. I didn't know. Hug people that I did know. I hugged you, Dave. I got to talk to people that like you don't get to talk to usually, right? So the community that we have grown at this club, and I say we because the owners have never, ever, ever, ever made it about themselves. They have made it about the community. They've made it about Burlington. They've made it about the state of Vermont. That this is not their team. This is our team. And I think in the end, that's what soccer is all about. And I think that when I engage with some of my other podcaster friends, Tottenham podcaster friends out there, when I engage with those people from England, they really cling on to this team, and they cling on to this idea that this is what soccer is all about, and you build it from the ground up, and it is a grassroots thing, and that's why when they have things like the Super League that happen in Europe, that they feel, even though they are these giant billionaire clubs, that these things are being taken from them, it still feels like it is a community. It is a small little tiny thing. It's a small little tiny ball that only exists in their world, right? But we all know exists outside of that world, and I think that's like what we need to realize about Vermont Green right now, is that it doesn't just exist for us. It exists outside of us, and it exists in the greater, wider world.
Well, and I think that that's something that, Sam, Pat, and Matt were very much, have always been so upfront about, is that they do not look at Vermont Green as a fourth tier soccer club in the United States. It is the biggest soccer team in Vermont. It is for Vermonters. There are fewer than 800,000 of us, but this is our team. It is why, Mike, I know you're from Rutland. The Paramount Theater went in a beautiful old 1900s marble building in the recently renovated Main Street of Rutland. Showed this game. There were bars all over the state that showed this game. And it's just
There was a bar in Newcastle that showed this game.
There was a bar in New York that showed this game, I believe.
Bar in New York. There was a bar in Santa Barbara that showed this game. And, like it's I was laughing because Pat Inferna, David, when he was on your podcast talking about the fact that he wanted to be very upfront that he is not a native Vermonter. But he grew up here, and like my family has been in Vermont since 1702, and like there's always these people who say that oh, you're not a real Vermonter unless you've been here for at least 3 generations or whatever. But like, if you are in Vermont, it is because you chose to come here.
Yeah.
You picked up sticks. Like David said, it's hard to fly here. It's hard to get here. There's 2 highways. One goes north, one goes east-west. That's it. And, it's something that you make a concerted choice to come here because you want to be a part of something. It's small. It's up in its weird little place up in New England. And the people who are here generally love it. And that's, the kind of community outpouring and community spirit that we got to see.
And I think, Mike, you talk about the teams in Europe and the communities, and actually had conversations with people at European clubs this week, and Vermont Greens come up fairly often. But I think it's the pride, it's the connection, it's the opportunity. Like, you are part of a small, I would say in terms of sheer numbers, supporters group that put together a TIFO that people, millions of people around the world are seeing, right? All of you are very half step removed from the middle of the eye of this storm. And everyone kind of is, which I think is one of the really special parts, is everyone feels a piece of it. Everyone feels connected to it, besides enjoying it and wanting to be a part of it, but it also has an ethos. And like, Sam, you're going to go to Gillette Stadium, owned by the Kraft family, and the ethos is money. And so none of us have really ever seen this at all, let alone outside of Vermont. Like, it just doesn't really happen in sports. And so to have a team that's built this way because it really matters and cares, and to have an ethos that speaks to a community because there's a reason it's there. Like, it's not, this wasn't a team that tried to be in Sacramento and then moved to Burlington. Like, this is where they were going to do it, and this is for a reason, and this is where it made sense. I think all of that really resonates with people. And I think all of that leads to like the pure joy and ecstasy and energy and excitement. And I think it would have led to the heartbreak as well, which you can only be so high if you are capable of coming so low. I kept telling Pat and Matt and Sam before the game, like, you guys already won. Like 6,000 plus people are coming to this. The world is watching the viewing parties, blah, blah, blah. They didn't want to hear that. They wanted Vermont Green to win the championship now that they were there, which is fully understandable. And I can say from my side, just knowing, I've known Matt for 10 years now. I've known Sam pretty much my entire life since elementary school. Like, they have put their all into this. And so it's funny to me when they're called owners, because when I think of owners, I think of private jet, drop in, be told the name of a player and mention something. And it's like, they are shipping the jerseys themselves. They're sorting the trash post game into recycling themselves. They are driving the players around themselves. They are organizing their meals. They are cleaning up those meals. Like, this is all hands on deck. And so I think every person who's connected to that feels that, right?
They wash
Mike,
the kits.
Yeah. You're there 12 hours before to set up
don't
tents.
have ball boys.
Yeah. You're there. Yeah. Post game, Sam Glickman's yelling about where the balls are because he was worried they had lost the balls. I was like, I think now it's okay. I think it could be okay to lose the balls now. But like, Mike, you're there 12 hours early, set up tents, right? And get it organized for people. Like, I just think everyone is pitching in a little bit on this. And so when they won, everyone won. And that feeling, you don't get that. Like, I love the Knicks. I would be done if the Knicks won a championship. But it's not. I didn't do it. And this one, I think, had something like that. And it is absolutely incredible to see that. And it's one of the reasons that I have covered Vermont Green on 4 different shows across 3 different platforms this week. Because I want to spread that concept to other people, which is like, you could also do this. It won't look the same, and it shouldn't look the same, right? Vermont Green is unique because of Vermont. But if you go into your community, and this is what Patrick said on our show when he sort of talked about it, and it's what Peter Wilt told me as well, and it's what I learned from the Hickory FC head coach, who I'm excited to see these 2 teams match up next year, is like, find your community and what makes it tick, and then find a way to help represent that through a club.
Yeah, and like, this is something that the Green Mountain Boys have been, kind of pinged online about, like, oh, like, where did you guys come from, and like, how did you, start doing what you're doing? And it was like,
what Apple machine did you come out of?
Right. And like, it's literally 15 people who got together at a brewery like 4 years ago. That's it.
That's
and
true.
We're a bunch of nerds who don't care if we do goofy shit like make Gandalf tifos. And it's like,
Make a tifo that has a picture of our coach on it.
yes, exactly.
Pac-Man tifos.
Pac-Man tifos. Like, we do whatever because it's fun and because we don't care if it looks cringy. Like, go find the other weirdos that are in your town or in your state who are also into soccer and go and hang out with them and build your own community. Find someone who is an artist or a graphic designer who is also into soccer, or teach yourselves. It doesn't matter if you're, have someone like Luann Bailey who almost single-handedly painted the Bernie Bow tifo. Like, you can find people in your town who can also do awesome shit like this. Like
She made the
these
flowers,
people
man.
are yes, she handmade like 300 of these beautiful flowers to go and wave
During a
for
tifo.
another tifo that was done. Like these people are out there. It is just about putting yourself out there to find these other people, and you can have something as cool, as passionate, and as beautiful as like this whole supporters group is. Not just the Green Mountain Boys, but like everyone who is there out in the stands watching Vermont Green. Like they're there. You just got to find them. And it's
Like,
not going to be at the Club World Cup where they're dropping people in, dropping these billionaires in. It's going to be in, um, uh, you know, it's going to be in Asheville. It's going to be in Des Moines. It's going to be in Ballard. It's going to be in Chattanooga. Like all these places where these awesome community clubs exist, they can exist in your town too. You just have to go out and find them.
there's nothing. I've said this a number of times to people. I said there's nothing more Vermont than independent soccer, right? There's nothing more Vermont than independent soccer. There's nothing more hippie and punk rock than what we have built here in Vermont, and I think that's kind of what we've built this club around, that ethos of independence and independent thought and creative energy. And I think that's what Vermont stands for, and that's what Vermont Green stands for. So um, we're a little bit over time, and I understand that it's a very important podcast for us because we are the undefeated, invincible national champions of USL2, the Vermont Green. We've been building this for 4 years, and it has come to fruition. Um, we get stars. We get a star. That's what that's what matters here, and we have thrown it out to the entire world, and we have shown what we are worth, and what we can bring to the community of soccer, um, and it's it's the most amazing thing that I've ever had to experience, and I hope that it continues, and I can't wait to see what the future brings for this club. So with that, we're gonna do a little housekeeping here, like we always do. This is the United in Green podcast. We are supported uh, very generously by the Blazing Musket. The Blazing Musket is a soccer website. It's a New England soccer website. It covers everybody from the New England Revolution to the Hartford Athletic to Rhode Island FC, and even your national champion, USL2 national champion, Vermont Green, the biggest club in the world right now for this moment. And if you can, please go there, support their paid tier. You get a lot of great content. You get stuff from Seth Macomer. You get stuff from Sam, our very own Sam Minton. You get stuff from the folks at Portland Hearts of Pine. Like it is really a great community, and they are actually pushing and propelling this thing that we call Vermont Green, and they have really done great work in that. So if you can afford it, support their paid tier. If not, just subscribe to their free tier. There's also great content there. Dave, I'm gonna let you plug yourself before we go.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Blue Sky at Empire GASS if you're watching. It's how I spell my last name. I'm going to hijack this so for one quick minute just because I'm here and say
Do it.
I just wanted to over iterate how proud I am of my friends, but especially in Sam Glickman, who helped put this all together and has sacrificed a lot for this to happen and is as happy as any person can be. He tried to make me rewatch the game with him at 4:15 in the morning the next day, and the last thing I want to do is hear my own voice. I'm happy to watch the game as long as we do it on mute. I just can't hear myself talk at that hour, but I couldn't be more proud of someone who he doesn't run sports teams. That's not his background. His background was he loved the game and he wanted to do something special, and he put his all into it, and has sacrificed a lot for this to happen. And I'm just really happy for him. I'm so proud of what he and Matt and Pat, but especially for him, knowing him as long as I have, 20 plus years, of what he's accomplished and how true he's done it to everything you guys said, Mike, Tyson, Sam, like finding weirdos and doing a thing, like that's what he's done. And he's done it at a whole different level. And I think it's going to make the world a better place. Is it going to save the world? No. If he was president of U.S. Soccer, could he maybe do more? I don't know. Or FIFA, whatever it is. But I think what Vermont has said and what Tyson was saying is going to resonate with people. I think it's going to create more and more of these makes it a better world, more community, more connection, more opportunity. And I anyone who's around Burlington or Vermont over the next few months, if you see him, a redhead, not Matt Wolf, the other redhead, but they both are, buy him a coffee or say hi or say congratulations for me. I'm just like beaming about it. And I don't know that I'm ever going to get over it. And I was glad I could be a small part of it for 10 seconds, but he has put his sweat, blood, and tears into this one every single minute for the last 5+ years. And the win is just one moment in all of that. But what they have built is just absolutely incredible.
So, that is the nicest sentiment that we could sign off on here. So, guys, we have a lot more. We have a lot more coming. We have a few weeks left. We promised the gaffer promised us that when they won it all, that he would come back on. So I'm going to hold him to that.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
I'm going to hold Coach Lee to that promise to come on that we talked about earlier in the season when he was coaching my son. And maybe we'll have a couple other surprises, but we got a few weeks left before that Premier League season starts, and we transition to other things. But guys, until we meet again, up the fucking green.
Up the green.
Up the green.
There we go.